Okay, hello, can you hear me? Hi, Mike. All right, good. Well, let's wait a little bit. Maybe someone else will join. It's nice to have audience, you know? Like I don't often get audience. Well, I don't get it live, you know? Um, a couple of hundred people actually watched some of these videos, which is good, I guess. It's not excellent, but it's okay. But having an audience of at least one person is like makes all the difference, you know? I'm glad to hear it. Um, I'm also a noob, you know. I started learning material creation with InstaMAT actually, or like node material creation. Of course, I used Blender before and Substance Painter and all that, but actually like diving deep into material creation using this kind of procedural workflow, that's also fairly new to me. I just kind of enjoy it. It's um I don't know. I feel like I have almost complete control, and I kind of like you know trying to make the noises give me what I need. It's like a bit of an alchemy, you know. All right, let's wait until 05 and then we can begin. It definitely gives you like yeah, it's definitely about practice. I mean, you can make it fairly simple. I think most of the tutorials that I have seen are actually about like making a very quick and simple rock here and there, or like some I don't know. It's like it's not too complicated, and then you get these like super complex graphs that I guess I won't be showing them today much, but maybe next stream that have like I don't know hundreds of nodes in them, and it's very complex and how like everything comes together. But you don't necessarily have to make it that way. I think actually simplicity is a better way to go. In many ways, like of course you want your graph to be to be as let's say as performance light as possible, and you also want to be able to sort of like go back and see what you did. And so if you use like 10 different weird blending modes and 50 different noises that don't really like, you don't know what they contribute to your final design, then it's like extremely difficult to go back and make actually like the graph, the material usable for someone else or for even for yourself. So like for example, this graph that I'm going to be showing right now, it's pretty simple, right? And I think I know what everything does. We are going to see if I can remember, but it's actually quite simple. That's not necessarily always the case. All right, I guess I can start. So let me just put on my desktop, which is like this. Transition. All right. So I guess hello everyone again. Today I would like to go back to streaming and talk about some of the materials I had been busy making. In fact, today I'm going to show you a very like simple material, a beginner-friendly material, and it's actually this Corten steel material. And maybe the next week or when I get the time, I'm going to show you two more projects. The one is this. I'm going to show you if I can open it. One is a desert material. Which is fairly complex, also quite heavy. Let's see if it loads while we are waiting. Yes, the lighting is a bit off. I have exposure turned up, so it's a bit too light. But these like deserty rocks with sand material, this is one of the things I had been talking about. It's maybe a bit too complex for what it is. I also don't love the rocks necessarily, but I guess we are going to talk about it next week, maybe. And also, I made this sci-fi panel, which I'm actually quite happy about. Just let's wait until it loads, which is actually a little bit complex to make because you have to do a lot of masking, a lot of placement, manual placement of like the bolts and like all these squares and all that. So it was a bit I don't know, laborious, I suppose. But I'm actually fairly happy with the result. Please ignore the artifacts. This is like the opacity freaking out in InstaMAT. But also I think that's going to come up in a week or two. And we are going to go through the graph and try to optimize it and try to parameterize it, which is something I want to do for the Corten steel today as well. We are going to try to make it from a personal project into a usable material. So that's what we are going to be focusing on. I should also show you my reference. I'm fairly certain you have seen this image. It's by an architectural studio called Snøhetta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I think it's like a, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Norwegian architectural studio, very famous. They make a lot of stuff, landscape stuff, skyscrapers, pretty much everything, urbanism. And they made this, which I think is somewhere in Australian Alps. Austrian Alps. Yeah, Tyrolean city of Innsbruck. And this is what they call, what is called Corten steel. So it's basically a steel alloy that with some treatment and over time with weathering develops this protective rust layer. And it's very popular in contemporary architecture. Actually, my real world reference is from Prague. There is a contemporary art gallery called Kunsthalle, and they have this ramp that you can touch when you like walk into the gallery. It's like an on-ramp that leads to the gallery, and when you touch it, it's almost perfectly smooth, which is surprising, right? It's rust, it's metal, it's been exposed to the elements, but it's very smooth. Smooth to touch, that is. Not necessarily smooth in terms of roughness. We'll get to that. So as you can see, like these are some like panels, and you can see that there are like a couple of aspects, right? You have the base steel, this like grayish bluish metal, very simple. Then you have the rust, right? The basic rust, which has like your typical rusty colors from like this bright orange to very dark red or almost black, brown. And you also have a lot of leaks, right? That sort of get I don't know, printed into the texture. And then you have these lines, these like horizontal lines, which I am not entirely sure what they are. It might be some you know finish that they do to the metal, or it might be some environmental effect. In fact, I'm going to show you a few more references that I found of this very same structure, if I'm not mistaken. Here, right? Like it can get very grungy over time, but here especially, you can see that there is probably like there's this inset, like extrusion, if you will, and that's where the lines are. So I think these are like lines that come from condensation or like probably cold spots on the surface. So I also wanted to introduce that into the material, these like lines. And this is something I want the user to be able to switch off, right? If he doesn't want that. It would be extremely difficult to sort of art direct in terms of like putting it into an actual environment and having the lines make sense. So I want them to be able to turn it off. But since this was my like personal project, I wanted to add this element. So I've also added it. Then it's of course a lot of different rust, a lot of different leaks, a lot of different smudges, etc., etc. A lot of aging. So that's basically it. So as you can imagine, the most of the work is done in color, in albedo, and you have to choose the right noises, the right grunges, right? And luckily, I think, since the Corten steel and the rust in general can be very different, but they also have this like rustic feeling to it, rustic feel of them, to them. So you can't really go wrong, I think, unless you completely like mess up the color scheme. You can like if you are somewhere in the vicinity of like orange, deep reds, browns, maybe even like dark, I don't know, dark blues. Sometimes you're fine, right? Like it's still going to feel like rust. Um, so yeah, that's the reference. That's the idea behind the material. And let's have a look at the graph. Also, let's have a look at the OBS. Okay. All right. No one chats. Okay, fine. So let me open the Corten steel material package again. So as you know, a package is like a folder with all your different graphs and assets and all that. In this case, I only have one asset. It's an image that I'm going to use to sort of get some color. It's one of the ways you can create color in InstaMAT. Of course, you can sample it. You can create your solid colors, your gradients yourself. All of this. You can also sample an image and use the middle row, the middle pixel row to generate colors for you, so that I use that as a sort of a base for the rest, but we'll talk about that in a bit. All right, so let me just switch to this. So this is the graph. It's not too long. It's just a couple of grunges, a couple of noises, a lot of color treatment, as you can see. This is all that's required for roughness, I think. You don't really need much. And it's pretty rough in terms of reflectivity, of course, because it's rust, right? Like it's still like it still has like minor facets to it, so it will sort of spread the light, not reflect it in a mirror-like way. So you want it to be pretty rough, I think, right? Of course, if you're like making the surface and it's supposed to be out there in a rainy day or on a rainy day, then you would probably want to add a lot of leaks and a lot of like moisture spots to it, so that it wouldn't be so homogeneous as homogeneous right? Like I have leaks, but they are mostly rough, right? But you could make them, like very low roughness, and it would look as if the material was wet. And yeah, and then the main thing happens here. It's material blend. Basically, I made a simple bluish, grayish steel material, and it's like a very simple roughness map, very simple color map, and yeah, and I put it together, and then we are using the material blend, right? Essentially, what we have is like we could have two graphs. One graph would be for, let's say, the metal base, the other one for the rust, and we could blend it together using this node, right? It doesn't have to be like open like this. It doesn't have to be so explicit, but that's fine, right? Like this is just a simple material, so there's really not much to it. So we can use material blend. We could also do all of this like ourselves. We could blend all these channels together. I don't think that's necessary in this case. I did it for the sci-fi panel. All right. So what do we do, right? So we start. Also, I started doing this. It's extremely helpful when you have a longer graph. I tend to sort of highlight the noises I use because you can come back and reuse them. And it's such a time saver, and it also helps you to optimize your graph. Because imagine, like every every noise you bring will take some time, right? Like especially grunges. Grunges are like combination of like many different noises together. And so they usually take, at 4K, they take like 100 milliseconds on average, I would say. Right, like a usual noise is not too heavy, but it's like maybe 4, 5, 10 milliseconds, but your grunges are, and so you want to be reusing them, and you can do that in many ways. You can, of course, for example, the easiest way would be to take something like safe transform, so you don't break the tiling, and you can rotate it. That already sort of like creates a different, more frequent look, more like a higher frequency, I guess, lower frequency details, and you can also scale it down to create finer detail. That's one way of doing that. You can also use the iterate node, which can actually be very heavy itself. I think I had shown this before. Basically, what it takes the same image and sort of slaps it over itself. But like you can specify which blend mode, how much opacity these have, how many of these like images will get added, and of course how much you rotate them so that it doesn't like cover itself, right? Like so that it doesn't overlap, so that it creates more variation. You can do that. You can, of course, like use histogram edits, histogram selects, what have you, right? And so, like, you would be surprised just how few noises you actually need to create something like this. Anyway, I guess I'll showcase this more in the next stream, but for now, we can look at this. So, the basic stuff is just a simple fractal sum. Fractal sum is like the most used noise, I think. Like if you actually say fractal in the quick search, you have all these like clouds and fractal sums and gray noises, all that. All of that is just a variation on fractal noise, and the settings you have there are so many of them, right? Like it takes a bit of getting used to like balancing the scale, the octaves, and I almost always turn on the interpolate. What it does, it sort of like gives you this grainier look. If I tone it down, if it loads, you can't really see it here, but yeah, now you can see it, right? Like it becomes almost like soft Berlin noise. But if you use interpolate at 1, it's very grainy, very I guess you get like specks, or like you get this like clouds like texture basically. And that's very good for this kind of material, of course, right? Like all of that is just like a lot of noise, a lot of small color differentiation and all that. So that's that. In fact, for Rust, I recommend that you sharpen your input maps quite a bit. Like by 10%, 20%, something like that, you get just a little more of a definition in those specs, right? A little bit more graininess. You can also use this custom grain option, which basically adds, I think, another grain noise into it. You can do that, of course. Now, so what I tend to do, I always like process my noises a little bit. At least I mix them somehow. In this case, what I'm doing is just like blending over, subtracting this grain noise to get variation. You get these like sharp specks, and yeah, that's like that's all that's for the base, essentially. Yeah, and then we have to look at like all sorts of details here. So one of the most prominent things, if you remember, were these leaks. So we have this moisture leaks noise, and I think for the most part it's pretty good. But you have to process it a little bit, right? Like it tends to be a little sharp along these edges, which I don't like. I think leaks are hardly ever this defined, this sharp. It looks a bit more like cloth, which I don't love. So I definitely like do a lot of processing on that. And this brings us to like one technical detail that I think is very useful. I think it was Dan Betke that actually reminded me that this exists, and that's channel composing. So what do I have, right? Like I have my original leaks, I have the iterated leaks, basically more detail, without the original leaks. I also have this, and I have transformed it. I made them larger, and because when you make something larger, you break the tiling. I use this make seamless node. Essentially, what it does, it ensures tiling again. You may get different results from this node because it's not like super smart. It just like blurs the edges and tries to overlap the textures in a tileable way. So sometimes you get like a noticeable seam there, at least like a blurry seam. But for something like this, it's perfectly fine, and like no one's going to notice it. I probably no one would even notice it if I didn't use make seamless, right? Because it's just such a small detail that's like being swallowed up by the rest of the texture. But I could use it, so I used it. Then I flip it, right? I don't want to have the leaks in the same place, so I flipped it, and I basically want to process these three maps at the same time. So what I do, I channel pack it, or channel compose it as it's called in InstaMAT. Basically, you take these textures and you feed them into the red, green, and blue channels. You can also use alpha channel, no problem, it's going to process it, but sometimes in a different way, you have to be a bit more careful. Now we are working with RGB, but it's perfectly fine because we still save some performance, and especially sort of like canvas space. That's very important, right? Like instead of having three directional warps for each, then again 3 directional warps for each, feeding noise into every single one, it's much better to have it this way. So one problem might be that you don't really get to see what you're doing because you get this weird preview. So you just like have to reconvert it somewhere back into some like black and white textures. So we are doing this here. So you first channel compose it, and then you channel split it or decompose it, if you will. Unpack what you packed. So yeah, so what I'm basically doing is very simple. I take a directional warp and introduce a little bit of warping using a Berlin noise, quite a large Berlin noise, so it gives like a large large wavy effect. Then I actually take something much like more detailed. I think it's just the auto levels on FractalSum. FractalSum hardly ever covers, or never really covers, the full range. As you can see, it's like here in this like 0.2, 0.3 range. So what you want to do is to use auto levels if you want like more, if you want the full range. Yeah, it's going to do this. Like the blacks are getting the darks are getting black, and the whites are getting like pure whites. And again, if I show you the levels now, you can see that we get like a Gaussian curve, a beautiful one, like a very evenly spread values, which is, so you don't necessarily have to do that. You can also like do your own adjustments here. Like let's say we want to clip it a little bit, and then we want to crank up the contrast. You can do that, of course, right? Like that's how you get different shapes from noise. Anyway, so I just took FractalSum. I auto leveled it so that I get like a more pronounced effect on the on the directional warp. It's actually very subtle. It's like 0.3. And if I turn it off, you can see that it's like introduces this little like very subtle breakup. But that's exactly what we want. So that's it. So the first one basically just like shifted the whole thing a little bit, created more of a wavy pattern. It's fairly subtle as well. And then we introduce smaller detail. And then what is this? Okay. I see. And then I basically just took this dirt texture that I'm also using elsewhere. We are going to get to that. Slow blurred it with itself, so it becomes more, what's the word, like more, like you create these specks, right? Like you can see it loses a bit of the definition. I'm using the maximum mode. And again, it's fairly subtle, right? Like I just didn't want these lines here, or like it's too detailed at this point, and I just wanted to cover up a little bit of these like waves, right? Like I wanted to break them up again. So that's what we are doing here with the subtract node. And that's it, right? Like these are all leaks that we are going to like reprocess a bit later for the color and the roughness. All right. Okay. No one's chatting. All right. If you have any questions, of course, do ask. I'll try my best to answer. Now, what else do we have? All right. So the directionality. As you can see, I have like a couple of directional lines here. First of all, these are these like yellows and like desaturated yellows, I guess. And you also get a suggestion in this case. I could change the seed and it would be more pronounced, of these like red lines that we saw in the reference. Again, if I bring this up, this is what I'm looking for, right? Like these lines and these lines. We sort of worked on the leaks, right? And now we want to work on this sort of horizontal directionality of the material. And so, of course, if you're working on a directional directional noise, you probably want directional noise. There are a lot of them. They are mostly the same. It depends like on what kind of controls you want. For example, you could also use anisotropic noise. And then like process it yourself. I might also do that at some point in this graph. I'm not sure, but yeah, you can rotate that, and you can maybe blend it with some of the fractal noise, and then like slow blur it and directional warp it, and you would get a very interesting result as well. But for now, it's not really necessary. So I get a few noises, mostly this directional noise and directional noise 4. The first one is just like very low detail, and I actually crop it to make it larger. Again, this breaks the tiling, so we use make seamless. And here you can see what it does, right? Like it sort of blurs the edges a little bit and like blends in the edges from the other side of the texture, so it creates tiling. The same happens vertically. So again, like this probably wouldn't be too noticeable, but since the graph is not too heavy, like why not? Why not make it seamless? And there is also this node make seamless synthesis, which is apparently it's not AI, but it's some sort of algorithm that helps again to make stuff seamless. I haven't had good results from that. Ever. I don't know how to use it, so maybe someone can explain it to me in the comments or something. Usually, especially for masks and like grunge maps and all that, make seamless is more than enough. It's more than enough. Quite often you don't even need it, even though you broke the tiling. Anyhow, it depends on what you want to use it for, right? Like if you use it for height, it will definitely show. If you use it for normal, it will show. But if you use it for like color variation, I don't think it's going to show unless there is like a heavy seam somewhere, right? So maybe I could have like got away without using it, or like not using it. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Mike, for your loyalty. If you have questions, of course, do ask, please. All right. So basically, we created a directional noise. We are using a directional warp. It introduces a little bit of like detail, a little bit of warping. It's very subtle again. I'm warping it in 2 directions, up and down, right? So it sort of like creates waves. I don't know which noise I'm using again. Yeah, it's just Berlin, just subtle waviness, right? If you make it too strong, which I actually had before, let's say I think I had it at 0.17, and we should also probably check these levels. This should pop up a little bit. No, no. Oh, what am I doing? Already 65, that's fine. Why don't I just... Yeah. Okay, so it's like, this is probably like as much as I would add of like a warping factor, because after that it just looks exactly like what I did. Like it looks like I used directional warp, right? So I think 0.10 maybe in this case for this noise with this kind of value range. You know, it's experimentation. You can't really like know in advance how exactly it's going to work. Yeah. Also, this is something I added later. Again, I wanted to break it up, so a little bit of slow blur. This time I think it's minimum, so I'm like eating inside the shapes. So it creates these like, you know, dents in the line. I think it gives a nice effect, even though it like steers away from the very like straight kind of lines of the reference. Yeah. It's fine, right? Like here you can see it's very straight. I wouldn't even have to probably warp it, but again, like I wanted to add a little bit of like variation on that. So yeah, that's the slow blur. Maybe if I turn off what I did here, yeah, and actually turned off the slope blur. Where is it? Here, you can see it like becomes very thin, almost too thin. So would have to play a bit more with the parameters here. All right, so that's the base directionality. I'm actually going to increase the contrast on that. I'm going to replace this this levels node with a histogram node so that I can easily expose the inputs to the user, so that he himself or she himself or whatever himself itself can adjust this as they need, right? Like turn it off entirely, or make them thick, or make them thin, or make them overlap more, and all that. Pretty much everything it does is like controlled by these levels and these 2 nodes here, the blur and the directional warp. All right. Also, I got this burned grunge, again quite heavy processing, you know, in terms of processing power, computational time, and I'm subtracting it. Right? If I didn't do that, I would have this. So it's always a good idea to just break stuff up. Maybe I'm subtracting too much of it, right? I could ease off. It's going to give me like more complete lines, which again we could expose this to the user later on. Let's subtract like 55%. That looks good for now. All right. Also, what I'm doing again, like adding some more. Basically iterate, set to add. I could set it to maximum, would pretty much give the same result. And what it does, if we turn it off, you can see that it's like adding a lot of detail here. So it's like more lines. The effect that it gives is like that you get these like double lines, which I think is quite nice. All right. Now, we are also getting another directional noise here, directional 4, which is this. It can be very grainy. You can set up the micro variance quite high to get a lot of like, you know, almost dust-like stuff. I don't want that. Hey Dan, hey John, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Hopefully this is interesting to you. I'm a bit tired and I haven't done this in a while, so I might be babbling a little bit more than usual, but you know, hopefully it's going to be useful to someone down the line, or to you. All right, what was I saying? Yes, directional noise. So this noise, this directional noise 4, gives a lot of control, right? And I kind of love that. So that's what I took for like the more detailed directionality. Essentially what it creates are these like yellowish lines. Hey Dan, yeah, thanks for making the videos. I hope you get to InstaMAT soon, you know, all the ZBrush stuff, you know. Who cares? No, I'm just kidding, dude. I'm very happy that you started making videos again. So yeah, where was I? Yeah, direction warp, and we are feeding that into one of the colors, I think. Yeah. So essentially, I guess I should talk about this now. Like, so how do you create a color, right? An albedo for something like this. Well, it's easy. You just take the grunge maps that you created with all the warps and all the slow blurs and what have you. Well, you take them and you just layer them. You basically you take a color or a gradient map in this case, and you blend it together with, by using some of the masks. So here I started with a freckle sum, auto leveled it in, and fed it into gradient dynamic. This gradient map, this is how you sort of create your, this is how you pick your colors. Let's use different noise here. Let's get this, and I'm going to pick from the reference here. And so you see what you get, right? And you can flip it. This doesn't do much in this case. And this could be a base for whatever it is you're doing, right? So that's how I sort of started. I took some of the reference images, and again, like I knew that I wanted some really like deep reds and like bright oranges and like medium red orange kind of reddish rusty colors. And so I just went online and like looked for a lot of these images and basically sampled some of them. Another method, and this is like I really wanted this particular color, and so I went online again. I think it's in my reference file as well. Yeah, it's this part right here, right? This little what's it called? Plant pot. I can't speak English anymore. Whatever. I took a screenshot, took it into Photoshop, and saved it as a PNG, and basically imported it into InstaMAT. I showed you before, and I'm feeding that into the gradient part of the gradient map dynamic. And what it does, it looks at the middle. Oops, I want to preview. It looks at the middle row of the pixels, confirmed by the developers, by the way. It looks at the middle row of the pixels and samples the colors from there. I'm still not quite clear on how many sample points there are, if it's like per pixel, and then it's like very much heavily dependent on resolution of the image, on the resolution of the image. In this case, it's like I think 256 times 256, so we would have like 256 colors, color stops, if you will. I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't get a straight answer from the devs, but or at least not one I could understand, which is not necessarily the same thing. Anyway, and so you can see this is the gradient we get, basically the average color per pixel per row. And I'm processing that a little bit. I wanted a bit more contrast, so I got a brightness contrast. You could do this with levels. You could do this with a lot of the other nodes. And I'm blending it together using yet another noise. This time I think it's a noise that I used for, what is this? Yes, some of the dots that I have here, right? And basically I just repeat this step over and over again. Sometimes I get somewhere where I don't want to be, so I use a bit of HSL, blend it in, all of that. So that's the general principle. Use the grunges as opacity masks, and like the color you will have on top, you can use different, by the way, like good blending modes for this are default, which is just like your basic cross blend, right? Average, add, subtract sometimes, but I would rather use something like overlay or soft light, because those actually take the middle gray as a reference and like brighten your brights and like darken your darks. So you want to be you want to stay in control, right? Like you don't want to use like this is actually maybe way too much, because if you keep adding like individual colors or individual gradient maps, and for every blend, first of all, your graph is going to get very heavy. Secondly, you will have zero control over the color. And if you give this to someone else who's not like in your head and doesn't know like what does what for your graph, then he won't be able to customize his material. So I'll get to this later, but there are a couple of nodes that help with this. And of course, if you keep using like defaults and averages and add subtract sometimes as well, you will pretty much stay in like a coherent workflow that someone else can understand as well. Or just like when he changes some value for one color somewhere, it will sort of propagate throughout the graph, and it will make sense. Like there will be like a what you see, what you get kind of relation. All right. So we already spoke about the directionality. We already spoke about some of the leaks, the base, and let's just have a look at the additional branches. So I added some more leaks. This map will, like it's eroded moisture, which is again a very interesting node, quite heavy, but I love it. It creates, well, what you see here, like these, well, I can bring in a new one. It starts like this, right? But then you can crank up the erosion intensity, and this is what's going to happen, right? I don't remember what exactly I did here. I guess I cranked up the intensity way higher. Yeah, that's it. You can actually override the maximums here by typing the number yourself. Sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the times you will get a parameter that can be overridden. And so you get these like crazy noisy, crazy artificial mathematical leaks. But, you know, you never leave your noise just like that. You have to process it. So in this case, I do frequency separation. Basically, I blur it, blur the original image, and blend it back in. This time using maximum, so I get like the brightness gets added. Then I do some more warping, some more warping, some more blurring. Then I level it out to only get the leaks that I really wanted. And that's what we are using for the color. Mostly these yellow bits somewhere, like this part, for example, or I don't know, this part probably as well. Like it you know, there are so many layers that it's like subtle, but definitely shows in the end, right? And then I'm actually creating another map that we use later, which is the leaks sort of subtracted, I think, subtracted from this burnt grunge. So again, like creating variation. The rust looks nice. Thank you, Dan. Sure, Matt. Stuff also follows soon, but fortunately we okay. Well, we have one stream, my stream, and that's the first stream in 4 months. So I don't count on it. You know, it's not the most reliable thing. But luckily there are also other streamers. There is this Japanese guy. I forgot his name. I think he goes by the name of Tori. He does streams in Japanese, but you can watch him work, and it also helps, I think. He does a lot of layering stuff. He recently started showing off some element graph creation for like alphas and normal stamps and all that. Pretty good stuff. And of course we have these like professionals who come and go, like Chunk, right? Like who creates some amazing videos, educational videos about InstaMAT, but he does so once every year or so. Anyhow, yeah. Now we also have dots, right? I don't know how much you can see, but first of all, there are these like super small dots, basically like your moisture drops. Again, color variation. And we also have larger dots. I don't know how much we can here. Yeah, these like, I guess, rust spots, which are like these shapes here. Yeah, I don't know. It's just grunge and grunge and grunge and grunge. But I thought this was a nice detail, like a little bit of color variation again. So here we go. Yeah. basically what I did, I took spots, blended it with some noise, iterated it, so I got a lot smaller spots as well, warped it a little bit with itself, so it's like a bit of a dripping effect in one direction, right? Moving down. I just recovered some of the values, and then I clamped it. And so what I get is like these original spots, dripping a little bit, and then I clamp it and I just mostly get the spots with a little bit of noise. And I slow blur it with itself, this time set to minimum, just to sort of define the shapes a little better. It removed some of the noise that was there, right? Probably not necessary. Yeah, you could do away with it easily. And again, we are using that for the color, for the roughness, and also as I can see, I'm reusing it for the base color for the metal. Why not? You know, free color variation. And that's pretty much it. Like these are the basic 4 or 5, 6 maps that you need to create something like this. Then it's all about just repeating the process of like blending the colors in a creative way. So sometimes I transform the noise instead of like going vertically, it goes horizontally. Sometimes I blend it with something new. You know, this time like I went crazy on this. I actually used a difference. Blending noise is very unpredictable, but it created these like isolated lines. It's actually a good one. I don't know if I can show you. Where is let's try. So you know when leaks happen, they usually get some kind of contour like this, right? Like a bit of definition here and there, and that's exactly what this node does for me, right? Like I get these like sharp edges, black edges, and I use that to drive the color. Okay, we spoke about the directionality. This is what adds these like small yellow dots. Again, I'm using, actually, we should talk about the color. So I took this gradient map from somewhere. It's very yellow, obviously, right? Like you don't want that kind of yellow orange in your Rust. It happens, but only like locally, right? You don't want too much of it. I process it a little bit. I think I'm mostly taking off the saturation here, so it's not that as like crazy banana yellow. And just slowly using that with different masks again, yeah, to layer it. And then, because I know that I want this like yellow again, but I don't want all these other colors that are there, this red and all that, I just average the color. Right? So basically it retains the relation that we had from like the previous color scheme, and with like subtle changes with like just HSL node, like you know, brightness here, brightness there, I reintroduce the same color. So I have consistency, right? So average color is a very good node to keep your colors consistent. You can also use replace color, and you can like basically what you do, you take the image in which you want to replace the color, and you can either like specify the colors here. You can even color pick. So let's say I want to replace this color with with pink, right? And you can see what it does. Like where is my like it basically took some range around the color picked color, and you can see what it does. So again, like you can, this is more of a manual thing, but again, you could take like an average color of this, for example, which is going to be like this brown red or something, and you feed that into the target color, and it will replace the color I picked, which is this like, you know, deep orange or whatever. No, it's not orange. You know what I mean. And what it does, it replaces it with a color. I personally don't love this because you tend to lose a lot of detail. So if I were to use this, I would use it at the beginning of the graph, so that I still get a lot of mileage out of the different grunges that I'm going to be layering on in the process of creating the albedo. Sorry, I need a little break. Going to take a sip of my delicious tea. as usual. All right. So yeah, that's one way of keeping consistency across the graph. As you can see, I've already done this before. Again, like I introduced a little bit of color variation, and then used HSL to shift it here and there. And again, some more HSL. Like the more you do this, the less control you're going to have, right? Like the HSL node is not the best node for like color consistency, because what does this mean? Like minus 10% saturation. It's relative to what input you feed it in, so it's like cumulative, right? Like you shift the saturation by 10% there, by a percent there, and like in the end you don't really know how many shifts you did. So if you then change the input colors, you're gonna have a problem. So I'm trying to like minimize these, but I didn't do a good job in this case. Okay. Right. Actually, this is, I guess, important. So we have these. Let me just switch it. Like essentially, this large shape here, this like big league. Sorry, that was very Czech. This big league. It comes from this map, right? So which is, again, I took a grunge, I selected the part I wanted, I made it seamless. Here you can really see what it does, right? Like it blurred the edges and picked the sort of it wrapped it around itself. Then I just clamp it, warp it a little bit. That's completely unnecessary. Blur it. That's actually quite necessary for something like a leak. Leaks are hardly ever like super defined, but they have contours, right? Like it's a bit of a balancing act. Yeah, I blend it with some other grunge using a minimum, so I don't really like add any extra stuff here in those blacks. Again, I break it up with clouds heavy. This time, again, minimum, so I'm basically like getting less and less in the darks. And then I'm using that for another color map, another gradient map, right? And adding that in. So actually, it's not the same shape. It's this shape. These like pinkish, almost white shapes. Again, more color variation. Yep. Keep adding more leaks, some transforms, some blurs, stuff like that. It's the same idea over and over again. Yeah. So that's the basic. Just the basic material. Now, let's talk about the sort of the base metal, underlying metal briefly. So as I already showed you, I took a random grunge map that I had, fed it into another gradient map that I picked from somewhere. I think I just googled like weathered steel, but obviously I took something that wasn't rusted. Then I just wanted to, I had something in mind, like an aesthetic in mind. So I took a solid color, this like light grayish blue, and just subtracted it. So again, getting more variation. Then I just take something really dark, a darker version of this, and average it in. So what it does, it like gives me these like darker spots. Looks like it's almost like anticipating the roughness channel a little bit. Then I decided I maybe want a little bit of like a rusty color in there as well. So I took some part of the I took this like orange brown thing, like an average rust color that I had from before, and I just feed it in. And there is this color variance node. InstaMAT uses this word variance. I actually don't think that's the right word for it. It should be variety, but that's fine. Basically what it does, it introduces subtle differences in color and saturation and luminance with your specification. This is basically specifying a range by which the grain can affect, shift these values, right? So like you're changing the hue. It's actually quite a lot, right? Like if you shift the hue by 0.1 of the 1 range, like 0 to 1 range, that's actually quite a lot. You're getting into a different color, right? So you have to be careful with this. Saturation and luminance, they are not as sensitive. Especially saturation, I think you can get away with a lot of variation, but you know, that's up to you what you're looking for. Now, I think the most important setting for me is usually this variety scale. What it does, it's like telling you how, it's like another grain scale setting. I don't know how to explain that. Maybe I'll show you, right? Like let's put it to the, so it was 0.25. Oops. And let's put it to the defaults. And it's like, you can see that it's almost like the grain has almost disappeared. It's still there, but it's like a very large scale soft noise. So this will bring in a lot more like pronounced variation. So I actually tend to control this with the variance scale instead of grain scale. Okay, I'm blending it in. Again, this time just cross blending it with some, you know, grunge to break it up so that it like doesn't appear everywhere. And that's basically it. I just do some minor adjustments. Again, we could expose this to the end user for the final product. So that's the color, right? So I didn't want to do much of a like roughness setup for this because why, right? Like it's mostly hidden. So I don't even know what I'm doing for the roughness. I think I'm just taking this grunge map and blending it over this like fully rough thing and subtracting it. Maybe it's actually too rough. I don't remember what I did here, to be honest. It doesn't really matter because it should never really show, right? Like unless we would like reveal the whole metal beneath it or underneath it, then like what's the point, right? So I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Could be improved. Right. What am I doing here? This is. Oh, sorry. No. This was metalness. Makes sense, right? Okay, sorry. Metalness, right? Metalness is generally like a 0 to 1 value. So I wanted to like basically it's all metal except for a little bit of those rusty spots, right? Sorry, I was talking nonsense there. This is roughness. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense. So roughness again, like I wanted it to be fairly shiny. In general, metals are hardly ever like super rough. I would like never really go over a 0.6 roughness, unless you're going for like a really old weathered metal look covered with a lot of dust and all that. But like if you're adding dust, you're probably better off using a dust node or a dust mask or a dirt mask, right? So the base should be 0.25, 0.3 roughness, somewhere in that area. It's actually difficult to come across like a consistent roughness values for metals because every renderer handles metals differently. So like eyeball it and test it in your DCC, right? Anyhow, so basically I'm just taking again grunges, and how I like to work with my roughness. I've already showed this before. I've showed this before. Basically I get like a basic value. In this case it's 0.5. And then I like layer it using different masks again. But this gives me like precise control of like where I'm subtracting or like adding values, whether it's less or more rough. So that's what we are doing here. Now I sort of clamped it so to get more whites in there. And I also said like the minimum is 3.6, 36% rough, right? Like I don't want the metal to be less rough than this. Because I knew I was going to subtract a little more as well. So we are sort of soft lighting. So again, like increasing the contrast in the texture based on the texture that's getting blended in. Some more variation. This time I'm adding roughness. Yeah, it's like again as if there was some grime, something like that. And like final tweaks, I wanted to stay in the range of like minimum 15%, maximum 75%. I don't want it to be like rougher than that. And you can see that the histogram shows you where the values are. So in general, this metal is actually quite rough. I could go even lower, right? Like let's say the peak could be like around 0.5, but it's fine because we are not really showing that off anyway. So that's just a quick setup for the roughness for the metal, and this is the roughness for the main thing. So what I tend to do, like for something like this, we don't really have much of a height information. Actually, we don't really have any height information. So there isn't really a point to using your usual suspects like curvature or ambient occlusion nodes, which give you this like detail that's related to your geometry, which is very useful for your albedo creation, but your albedo maps. But in here, I just wanted to get rid of like the peaks or like the highs and lows. So I use the high pass, basically isolating some of the like middle values. It still gives me a bit of detail here and there. It introduces some noise and all that. I leveled it so it's almost white, and then so it means like almost rough, right? Like minimum 70% rough. And then I just keep using more masks. This time this, and this, and this, and this. It's the same masks we had before, nothing new. And I just control these by these solid color inputs. So let's say I want, what does this add? Oh, these are the leaks, right? So I can say like these leaks are actually very rough in my case. In fact, it doesn't make much sense, but they could be less rough, right? Like they could be, I don't know, we could make them a lot shinier. Let's make them like this. I don't know if we are going to see this anyway. Yeah, we don't, so it doesn't really matter. It shows a little bit, right? Like you can see that it sort of brightens because it gets more light gets reflected out of this. But again, we could expose this to the user, right? Like let's say we make 3 of these granges, like sort of something that can be controlled across the graph. All right, and that's it. I think in the end I added this huge map for this part, right? So that I actually make it less rough in general in these like big leaks where the metal shows as well. And that's it. Yeah, this is the one last thing. I actually tried to. So we have to have a mask for the general blend of the materials, right? So we have the rust layer, we have the base layer, and then you have to tell the blend node how to blend them together. Well, I'm using this metalness mask essentially for that. So it's the metal is going to show where the yeah, I can't speak anymore, where the whites are. That's it. Nothing too complex. And so there we have it. A very basic, yet I think kind of okay rust material. Of course, it's nothing special. It was just like a quick spur of the moment thing. I went to the gallery, saw the rusted ramp, the Corten steel ramp, and I thought, it's like this ought to be super easy to make. So I made it. Now, so I've spoken for about an hour now. So I'm again going to take a sip of my delicious tea, and if there are any questions, anything, please ask. There is this tombstone material, mesh for material previews. I don't find it very useful for obvious reasons. Yeah. Anyhow. Well, you're welcome, Mike. So yeah, I wanted to do some of the like parameterization, like exposing the controls to the user, but I guess I'm a bit tired. And this stream has already been like an hour long, so maybe next time, maybe I don't know, tomorrow, so sometime. Sorry, I don't have much energy these days. Yeah, been a while since I streamed. Need to build up that stamina again. But yeah, so I guess what I want, something better than this like general blending control for the metal. So I can, because right now, as you can see, it doesn't remove all of it, which is good, but also that's not what I want. And like if you actually try to remove a lot of it, then the colors get messed up. So I would have to optimize a little bit. I think 0.3, 0.4 was the value I had before. It was kind of okay. What else? Well, I would like to somehow expose some of the color aspects of the graph. Like, since it's based on this image, it's sort of like hard-coded, if you will. So there isn't that much. I don't like this strategy for anything that should be like really procedural, right? Like if it's procedural, you can't just load in images and say that's it. Like it might work, but the amount of control you get is like diminishing, right? It's diminished. So I guess I could input, like expose some of these, maybe these offsets or something. Again, it's like a bit complicated, because a bit difficult, because you're basing the gradient on a noise and what you pick on the screen. So it's again, it's like a bit baked in, if you will. So maybe not the best maybe not the best graph to parameterize the whole thing, but still. What I definitely want to do is to sort of have a toggle and some settings for these horizontal lines. It's like a thing that should be there if it makes sense, right? And only if it makes sense. So I guess I would like to be able to remove them and make them thinner, thicker, more pronounced, less noisy, stuff like that. So basically these graphs here, they would have to be parameterized. Other than that, it's mostly like maybe working a little bit more on the metal part, and maybe like making a better sense of these values for the rust, because sometimes I feel like, for example, some of the leaks are like way too rough for what we want. It's very uniform, maybe too uniform, right? Like it's one thing to be like photorealistic. It's another thing to be pretty, to have pretty materials. So maybe a bit more artistic leeway there might be a good idea. But I wouldn't really like expose this to the user too much, right? Like the rust looks good if it keeps its roughness value at around, I would say, 75 to 95% roughness, right? Like it's supposed to be very rough. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has like a lot of height variation or normal variation, right? Like it doesn't, right? But or not necessarily. But it can be coarse, it can be fine, but it's definitely going to scatter light. So we want to make sure that that's sort of like limited. Mm-hmm. And maybe what we could do, like introduce some, like for example, this solid color could be exposed to the user. Maybe this gradient map, or like at least maybe we could do like an HSO node with the hue here to allow for like different metals, underlying metals. It doesn't make much sense. It's Corten steel, so it's always going to be an alloy of like zinc, iron, what have you is there. I don't actually remember, but there were a couple of alloys that are always there in Corten steel, and sorry, a couple of elements, and you probably don't want to change the color too much. I guess like anyway, like how many metals are not like your average, bluish kind of gray? I guess like silver, copper maybe, that's also an alloy. So like maybe there is not much point to it either. I don't know if you have any suggestions about what should we like do with this. I'll be happy to hear them. And I think I will slowly be wrapping this stream up. So again, one last chance for live questions. If there are any questions in the comments, of course, I'll be glad to answer them if I can. Also, I'm intending to sort of create a Gumroad page probably, where I'm going to upload these materials. This one probably for nothing, like it's going to be free of charge. But I also made some of the more complex materials, and I think some of them are actually okay, maybe production ready even. So I'm going to work on them a little more to sort of create a nice InstaMAT file for you guys, and also just prepare the textures, a couple of variations maybe. And yeah, I would like to sell them a little bit, so it's going to be a few bucks, but these take a lot of time to make, and even though this is just for my portfolio and all that, I would like to eat at some point in my life. So if you guys are interested in the future, I'll be happy to point you to my Gumroad, which is coming up. Stay tuned. Monetization, yay! Like and subscribe. Don't, right? Like don't do that unless you want to. Unless you find this content, unless you find this video useful, please, by any means, like and even subscribe. But I don't even care. Okay. Okay, that's it. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening, watching. And I'll be back, probably going to try to parameterize this one and at least show off the result. Maybe I'm going to do a short stream, like 20 minutes, trying to go through it. I would have to sort of go through the graph again myself and see what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to do that off stream. And maybe at the end of the week, at the end of the next week, I will be back with the desert material, which is going to take a lot longer to sort of go through. There are some interesting techniques. I'm also making use of subgraphs, basically splitting various parts of the graph into different graphs so that we can like reuse them a couple of times. It works basically the same as in a Substance Designer, but I would say it's a bit like easier here, a bit sexier. And yeah, we are going to scatter some twigs and some rocks and sculpt some rocks and create a good-looking desert sand. At least I think it was good-looking, with some little animal tracks. That's going to be next material, and of course the sci-fi panels, which is just your like general hard surface kind of height modeling. It's not difficult. It's just it just takes a lot of time. All right then. So see ya. Have fun. Bye bye.